Virgo, the twist that will paralyze everyone. Get ready to surprise those who doubted you. There's something no one tells you about the day everything changes. It doesn't seem any different from any other day. The same dishes in the sink, the same commute to work, the same feeling of being one step behind something you can't name. And that's why almost no one notices when it arrives. Do you know that nagging feeling, the one that lurks beneath everything, even when there's no apparent reason? People call it excessive worry. They call it a control freak, an exaggeration, a relax, not everything needs to be so calculated kind of thing. But what if what seems like nervousness was a precision instrument registering tremors that haven't yet reached the surface? There's a device buried deep inside that senses the movement of the tectonic plates long before any tremors are felt in the streets. It doesn't scream. It simply silently records a trembling line on paper, while everyone around trusts that the ground will remain still. When the tremor finally comes that everyone feels, someone always asks, "How did nobody see this coming?" And the answer, almost always, is that someone did see it. It's just that nobody wanted to listen. You are that person. It's not the first time. From an early age, you learned to notice changes before anyone else did. The tone of voice was a degree colder. The pause lasted half a second longer before the answer. The plan seemed perfect, but it had a crack that only you saw, because only you paid attention to that detail. And the price of seeing all this was always the same: being called an exaggerator, someone who sees problems where there aren't any. But the problems were always there. They just took longer to appear for others. It has a type of security that no one from the outside understands. It's not like a regular safe with a key. It's like a safe with multiple layers, one inside the other, each requiring a different combination, a different gesture, a different verification. From the outside, it looks like distrust. It looks like you don't trust anyone, not even yourself. But nobody builds a safe like that to store something worthless. You only protect what really matters in that way. And what you keep inside, behind so many locks, was never pride. It was never control for control's sake. It was the quiet, stubborn certainty that one day someone would try to open that door carelessly, and you needed to be ready before that happened. You lock it because you've seen what happens when someone trusts the wrong person too soon. There's an image you may have experienced without realizing its name, that of being alone, keeping a light on, while everyone around you has already turned theirs off and gone to sleep. A lighthouse keeper doesn't work during a beautiful day, when the sea is calm and no one needs any guidance. He works when no one else is watching, when the fog descends and the ships out there depend on a light burning without an audience, without applause, without anyone to say, "It's good that you didn't give up." You were once a light for people who didn't even know how much effort it took to keep it lit. You held the calm of an entire room without anyone asking who was holding you up. That has a name, but rarely does anyone tell you. It's not weakness to need rest after being a beacon. It's just that no one taught you that you can also go out once in a while without the world sinking. And yet, there's a question that never leaves your head, especially on nights when the silence becomes too loud and you realize that the light you keep on for others was never the problem. The problem was always that no one ever asked who. Turn on that light for yourself when there's no one else to do it. There's no easy answer to that question, and perhaps that's exactly why it keeps coming back, night after night, without warning. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose doesn't treat Virgo as a personality problem to be solved. It treats this constant vigilance for what it truly is, a rare tool that only works properly when you stop wasting energy defending yourself from your own clarity. It shows how to stop carrying so much attention alone and how to transform detail into direction instead of a burden. You're probably still feeling that nagging feeling right now, trying to understand why it sounded so familiar. This discomfort that won't go away on its own is a sign that something inside you is ready to change, just waiting for a push that doesn't require another sleepless night of thinking alone. Now, while it's still fresh, it's easier to break the habit once it's become part of your identity. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Leave a comment below. When was the last time you noticed a problem before everyone else and kept it to yourself? There's something no one told you about waiting for the right moment. From the outside, it seems like you're late. Everyone around you has already harvested, posted, celebrated, moved on, and you're still there observing, feeling that it's not the right time yet, even without being able to explain exactly why. Some people harvest the grapes as soon as they reach the right color, without checking anything else. And some people wait, not out of fear, not out of indecision, but because they know that color is deceiving. The sugar concentrates at a specific, almost invisible moment, which only becomes apparent to those who have been paying attention for weeks, not just on that day. Harvesting too early yields a thin, bodiless wine that deceives at first sip and disappoints later. Harvesting at the exact point produces a vintage that no one forgets, but requires enduring the pressure of being the only vineyard that hasn't yet been harvested, while the neighbors are already celebrating their harvest. You've felt this more times than you'd like to admit. That feeling of being behind in a relationship, a decision, a life change, just because everyone around you has already moved on. But what seemed like a delay, upon closer inspection, was just the time your particular grape needed to concentrate on what was worth saving. No one ever told you this, but perhaps the right question was never, why are you taking so long? But rather, what exactly are you letting ripen while pretending you're just stalling? And this is where things get really uncomfortable, because waiting for the right moment comes at a price no one tells you. The price of being misunderstood by practically everyone while it's happening. They call it indecisiveness. They call it fear of taking risks. They call it she overthinks, and that's why she never decides anything. A D. And you swallow it year after year, because explaining the real reason that there's a specific crop ripening and that it doesn't respond to anyone's haste sounds too complicated for a 5-minute conversation. But there's a detail that changes everything, and that no one has told you until now. The vineyard waiting for the right moment doesn't stand still. It continues working silently beneath the surface while everyone thinks nothing is happening. The roots keep pulling what they need from the soil, even without a single leaf stirring above. And when the time for the right harvest finally arrives, no one remembers the delay, nor how many times they doubted its rhythm. They only remember the result and pretend they always knew it would work out this way. There's a type of investigation that nobody hires from outside. Nobody pays you to do it. You open the case yourself, alone, in the middle of the night, digging through evidence that didn't always exist the way you remember it. A true private investigator doesn't just work with facts. They work with patterns. They gather small, seemingly unrelated clues and assemble a timeline that explains why things went wrong and, most importantly, whose fault it was. But there's a specific type of detective who, without realizing it, always ends up investigating the same suspect in every case, themselves. You know this scenario by heart, the call you missed at the right time, the phrase that came out wrong in an important conversation, the opportunity you missed because you were busy analyzing something else. Each of these moments becomes a piece of evidence, carefully filed away in a mental dossier that you never show to anyone, but which you consult on your own every time something goes wrong again. The problem isn't that you overanalyze things, it's that you've become both prosecutor and defendant in the same case. And in this particular court, you never acquit the accused. You always find a way to reopen the case, to find new evidence, to prove, once again, that you were guilty. And the strangest thing is that nobody asked for this investigation. You decided, all by yourself, to be both the accuser and the one who needs to defend themselves in an empty room where there isn't even a jury. But every good investigator at some point in their career encounters a case that doesn't add up the way they expected. Evidence that, viewed from a different angle, in the right light, doesn't imply any guilt. It just means you were doing the best you could with the information you had at that moment. And then comes the question that none of your dossiers have ever answered to this day. What if half of these cases you keep against yourself never involved any crime to begin with? If you've recognized this mental dossier that only you browse through, there's a way to end this process without having to prove anything to anyone, not even yourself. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose addresses Virgo's tendency to become the promoter of their own life and shows how to transform this capacity for investigation into real discernment, not a perpetual sentence. It helps to separate self-knowledge from self-criticism disguised as responsibility. This case that you keep reopening every night doesn't need another piece of evidence. It needs someone showing you the solutions you never saw in the dossier. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a type of map that nobody can draw from a distance. You need to enter the territory, step in the mud, get lost a few times, and then go back and draw the right line. And until that map is ready, everyone around you thinks you're lost, when in reality you're the only person truly mapping anything. A cartographer arriving in a territory never before mapped cannot trust any previous map. He needs to distrust even his own first impressions, because the morning light deceives the size of a river, and the afternoon shadow hides a drop that becomes a ravine. He returns to the same place several times, at different times, just to be sure that what he drew first is still true. From the outside, this seems like indecision. It seems like people who don't trust their own work. But it's exactly the opposite, trusting the final result so much that you accept revising the draft as many times as necessary. You do this with your own life all the time, but nobody taught you to call it mapping. You revisit the same decision from different angles, not because you're indecisive, but because you know that a decision seen only in the morning, only in a moment of euphoria, or only in a moment of fear, never shows the whole territory. And every time you redraw an internal boundary, that limit that you now accept, that belief that you now discard, there's someone on the outside asking why you change your mind all the time. But you're not changing your mind. You're completing a map that no one else has had the patience to draw properly. And the problem with this kind of work is that it's invisible until the day someone, desperate, lost, and without any direction, appears needing exactly the path that only exists because you insisted on mapping every inch of that territory, even without anyone asking, even without anyone thanking you while it was happening. On that day, the entire map in your head stops seeming like stubbornness and starts to seem exactly what it always was. The only reliable document in a region that everyone crossed in the dark, without any compass. This map that you insist on redrawing on your own, without anyone to check the route with you, is exactly where the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose comes in. The book doesn't give you a ready-made map. Virgo would be suspicious of that immediately. It teaches you a way to trust your own process, to stop blaming yourself for still revising internal boundaries, and to see each new version of the map as progress. Not a failure of the previous one. You've been doing this work alone for too long. You can still continue mapping this territory without any company, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a part of the process of developing a photograph that almost no one sees. It's not the click. It's not the light entering through the lens for a fraction of a second. It's what happens afterwards. In the darkness, when the paper submerged in the liquid slowly begins to reveal something that already existed there, invisible, waiting for the right time to appear. Anyone who develops photographs in a dark room knows one rule that no one can break. You can't turn on the light too early just because you're anxious. If you open the door too soon, you ruin the entire image, and what could have been sharp becomes a shapeless blur. The image needs its time in the liquid, in the dark, without haste, without interference, even if each second seems like an eternity to those waiting outside. You know this darkness. You've waited for entire revelations about your own life without being able to turn on the light before the time came, even when every cell in your body was begging to know how it would all end. You've held on to unanswered questions for months, sometimes years, because some part of you knew, even without proof, that forcing that image to appear too soon would ruin everything that was still forming. And the cruelest part of this process is that while the image is still in the liquid, it looks like just a blank, wet sheet of paper, meaningless. No one from the outside can see what's already being drawn there. Only the developer knows that an image is forming beneath that apparent whiteness, because they trust the process more than they trust the haste of everyone around asking, "So, has anything come out yet?" There is a specific moment, and only one, when the image goes from invisible to clear, not gradually, but suddenly, as if the paper decided all at once to stop hiding what had already been resolved long ago. And it is precisely this instant that is about to happen to you now. Only this time, instead of being alone in the dark waiting, someone is about to witness the entire image appearing at once. If you feel that your own image is almost ready to emerge, but you're still waiting in the dark, the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose exists for that exact moment. He doesn't take you out of the process. Virgo knows there's no shortcut to true revelation. What he does is keep you company in this darkness, showing you that what you're forming inside already has shape, already has direction, even if it still looks like just a blank sheet of paper on the outside. You've waited alone in the dark for too long. You don't have to wait alone for the rest of the time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There is a dam that holds back an entire river behind a concrete wall, silent, day after day, year after year, without anyone on the other side noticing the pressure being contained there. From the outside, it just looks like a still wall, a static, unremarkable structure without any noteworthy movement. No one applauds a dam while it's just holding back water. But a dam wasn't made to remain still forever. It was made for a specific moment, calculated with precision, when the floodgates open and all that accumulated force is released at once. Not as a destructive flood, but as controlled energy, distributed exactly where it needs to go, transforming months of silence into movement that sustains an entire city. You've been that dam your whole life without knowing how to name it, holding back perceptions that no one wanted to hear yet. Holding back decisions that needed more time to mature, holding back a version of yourself that hadn't finished forming, while those on the outside only saw a still, quiet wall with nothing happening. And every time someone doubted you for that, some part of you held onto that doubt too, along with the rest of what was being contained. But no dam holds water forever by chance. It holds because it knows at some deep structural level that the moment to open the floodgates hasn't arrived yet, and that opening them too early wastes everything that took so long to accumulate. What seemed like paralysis upon closer inspection was just the final stage of containment before release. And when the floodgates finally open, no one asks anymore why you took so long. They're too paralyzed, watching the force that emerged from a place they swore was empty. Perhaps this is the twist that no one around you is prepared to see coming. Not a sudden, unexplained explosion, but the inevitable result of everything you held back, calibrated and protected in silence, while being called too slow, too dramatic, someone who never decides anything. The water always knew where it was going. It was just waiting for the right moment to show it to those who doubted it.